Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury.
And I'm Nick Amaral.
And welcome to Ask the Tech Coach. If you're an instructional technology coach, this is the podcast for you. Nick, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
I am so excited to get back into the podcasting studio, talk about instructional technology coaching. Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an instructional technology coach.
Yeah, I'm a staff developer, tech coach up in a district in northern New Jersey, Bergen County. And, just daily grind right now is planning for summer PD, putting together a little ed camp, and starting to get a leg up on, next school year.
There's, of course, so many great things that's happening these days when it comes to instructional technology coach. If you are an instructional technology coach, we want to hear from you and have you be a part of this show. You can, of course, go over to askthetechcoach.com, where we are creating an amazing platform for tech coaches all throughout the world. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you could use on our brand new website and how we can help you out. Of course, there's other great ways to be a part of this. You can go onto Twitter at AskTheTechCoach and leave us a question and leave us a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. We want to hear from you. But Nick, before we get into all of that great stuff that's going to be coming onto our podcast this year, and before we start talking about what other topics we're going to be doing, I have a question for you, man. There's a lot of great things that are happening in the world of instructional technology coaching, but many people don't even know what a tech coach is. What is a tech coach, Nick?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think most of us tech coaches, some of us think of ourselves and a lot of teachers as just that tech help, that break and fix person. But I think there's a lot to it. We're the innovator. We're the person who's got the freedom to fail. The teacher, mentor, coach, trainee, facilitator, co-teacher. I mean, there's a lot of kind of hats that I think we wear on a daily basis. But I think it just comes down to just being that voice for the teachers, right? Like being that supplemental piece to help them lesson design and figure out new and exciting things to engage their students in their classroom. And we're that person to help take them, to the next level and assist them along the way. Whatever we can do to sort of facilitate the instruction and then integrate technology when it's due and sees fit.
You said that there's a lot of hats that a tech coach wears. I think you forgot my favorite one, therapist.
Right.
I've been an instructional technology coach. This is going into my 4th year. I am responsible for I always say students because I think of them as my students, but I've got K-12 teachers and support staff and, really anybody in the building we're responsible for, right? And sometimes a teacher just wants to come to you and say, I need help. I don't get something. And that's why it's important to kind of join together and help support each other, right, Nick? I'm sure that you have your support group that you go out and say, hey, guys, I've been having these issues with my teachers. What do you think? Talk to us a little bit about the importance for tech coaches to reach out to and build their own professional learning network.
No, absolutely. I think what you're hitting on is them coming to you as just another voice, but a voice that sees you as someone that's equal. We're, most tech coaches in their positions, we're not supervisors, we're not administration. We're there to assist the teachers in any way we can in a non-evaluative way. And I think they look at that as, okay, this is someone on my playing field who's been in the classroom that has this experience. I think for me, reaching out to you, so reaching out to other people in my professional learning network to bounce ideas off of when things fail on my end and something didn't go right, to be able to see what someone else did. And I think you need those things. It's sort of that pass the pair thing, where we can get into each other's classrooms. For us as tech coaches, that's our way to do it, to reach out to other tech coaches and to see what each of us are doing in our districts, in our schools.
So here we are. It is August, and many teachers over the summertime, I caught them at ISTE, and they were excited about their new position as an instructional technology coach. And I asked them this simple question, Nick. I said, what are you going to do first? And they said, I don't know. I'm so excited. I've got this thing. I don't know what I'm going to do first. Nick, do you remember being a brand new tech coach and having the world at your fingers, but not quite knowing what the first step is?
Yeah, definitely. And it's scary, right? Because you've got so much going on in your head and all these ideas of things you want to do. And it's tough to figure out where to start, especially when you're facing this new teachers, new staff in front of you.
So this month is August, and the entire month we're going to be talking about things that you can do as a brand new tech coach to get ready for the school year. And if you're not a brand new tech coach, maybe these are things that you wish you had or things that you weren't going to be looking forward to. So please join us throughout the month of August. Our next show, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a foreshadowing here, is all about the things that you can do to get organized for that new year. Like, what are some of the things that we can do to get organized? We're going to be talking a little bit about that as we go through next week. But today we're going to be focusing on 3 things that you need to do before the school year starts. What are those 3 things that we're looking at? And Nick, one of those things for me is to make sure that I have a good, solid system for collecting, curating, and sharing resources. Nick, do you have a website that you use for your teachers?
I do. And, that was one of the first bases of, getting organized and getting myself situated with a new district or with a new staff. And for me, it's just, that having that hub, like you said, that website where you can stream everything through to send out to staff, where they know they can go to as that one-stop shop for anything they need. And, Jeff, I know you did a great job with your district, and you have, your cardinal classes and all those pieces that are kind of integrated. So I don't know if you kind of want to take the reins on this, but so, let's talk about a little bit about your site.
Well, I think it's important that we realize, and I'm going to use your words here.
Sure.
Your site, right?
Yep.
Many tech coaches say, I have a site for my district. I want anybody out there who's thinking about putting a website together or getting into tech coaching to kind of get the idea here. It's not our website. It's the teacher's website. Now, I got to tell you, I made a mistake. I've gone through a few different versions of the Tech Coach website. At one point, I had it in my head that I was going to be building TeacherCast Volume 2. And you realize very quickly that your job is to not help other teacher casters. Your job is to find the teacher that's scared of turning on the computer. And if you go out there and you build a monster website and say, here, Nick, here's where the resources are, they're going to get intimidated very quickly or not know where to go. So that was very apparent after you spend all of this time putting resources together and making it look as perfect as possible, and you have everything looking right, and then you realize people aren't clicking on it because maybe they don't know where to look. Maybe they don't think like you. Maybe they just need to be spoon-fed a little bit more. And that's not a problem, right? Like, our job is to get everybody involved, right?
Sure.
And so I find that there's a few different things that are needed on the website. And number one, it's a clean navigation, right? And that's a big thing, right? Making sure that your website, when you're looking at a menu or a sidebar or graphics, everything on there needs to be for the teacher that is kind of taking that first jump off, right?
Absolutely. And it's a good point that you said that, because I was the same way. When I put my site to, putting the site together in the hub, was redesigning it a few different ways and using different platforms, just trying to get a feel for what it was that I wanted the teachers to experience when they went there. And, for me, it was, I wanted that homepage to have pretty much all of the tips and the tech tools and the things that I wanted. I wanted all my tips, my little mini blog posts, whatever it was, to just be there on that front page, that if you went anywhere on that site, just go to the homepage, right? Like, when you click the link, it sends you to the one spot you need to be that's going to have, the updated information or whatever it is I need to get out to you.
Now, with all of that comes the idea that sometimes your teachers don't see the educational world the way you do. And I'll give you a good example here. When I first created my first Tech Coach site, I threw a ton of resources from friends of ours, right? People who created these massive websites, and they had all of these screencasts and blog posts and stuff already done. And because we look up to them in the ed tech world, that doesn't always equal that teachers are going to look at them as the same. And I think where I'm saying with this, Nick, is sometimes it's easier as the school year goes for you as the tech coach to make your own screencast. I know you can find stuff on Casey Bell's site, on Richard Burns' free tech site, on Ditch That Textbook, all those great sites. But sometimes it's easy for you to create a 2-minute screencast that the teacher can then connect to you as their tech coach, rather than saying, hey, Richard Byrne made this great thing, or Casey Bell has a great site on Google Docs. What do you think about that, Nick? I mean, do you find that you're creating your own stuff versus going out? Or at what point do you say, hey, Casey has a great site, use this? Or, you know what, I can make a 3-second screencast and say, dear Nick, I see you're having a problem, try this. And you have that more personal approach to it.
No, you know what it is? I think, what you're saying and getting those pieces of information that are out there already, I think that's a great way to start. But I think in the end, when you say to yourself, you know what, I can do that. It's like I used to find tip sheets and things like that had enough information, enough to get what I wanted out to the teachers or for them to get started. But as time went on, I found myself designing my own crib sheets, and it just had things, tips and tricks that I just found became nuances to our district. So it became more personalized. And I think when it's built and it's organic that way, and as things come up and you start to transition and make those videos, I remember doing that in the classroom when I taught, right? Like students were struggling to write thesis statements. So I would just send them a source like, here, I found this YouTube video on this teacher teaching you how to write, an appropriate thesis statement. But as it went on, why couldn't I create that video and get that personal connection now with the students where, oh, wow, Mr. A went ahead and he put this video together for us. And now it's just more personal. I see the work and the time he's taken. And I think the same goes, for our teachers when we do that as tech coaches.
And I think for any tech coach out there creating their first or second website, having a bunch of pre-made YouTube videos is a great thing to
Great way to start. Yep.
But as you go through, maybe you make it a point of in the first 6 months, you replace 4 or 5 of them, right? Because you're going to have teachers that are coming up and asking you things that are on the website.
Absolutely.
So maybe maybe you make it a goal. Okay, every week or once every 2 weeks, you're going to make your own thing with your own teaching, right? Because maybe Nick teaches it differently than I would.
Right.
And of course, you don't want to be sending mixed messages out. So having something in your own voice is certainly great. Now, when it comes to putting all this stuff together, Nick, there's several great platforms that I wanted to spend a couple seconds on each of those. Now, I wanted to ask you, you don't necessarily have a website. You've got a learning management system, right? And you do a lot of your professional training through that. How, for people who are not in a learning management system, how is having a learning management system an advantage? Or maybe how is it a disadvantage for you?
Sure. I'll go with the disadvantage first. One of the things that I found was all the creativity that you want to put into it. It's not an open slate and platform like a WordPress or a Weebly site or anything like that, right? I'm not working with where I can just drag and drop images anywhere and do anything like that. However, what the learning management does is its strength to students, right? Is organizing everything, is putting due dates, is managing stuff where certain things are active and certain things are closed. So I'm a big user, and I've used Google Classroom, but Schoology is where I, extensively with LMS work right now. And I found that to be just a powerful piece. That's the hub to my online learning. I send, tip or website updates. I send out some crib sheets I have posted on there as well. And even a calendar and stuff like that. So I just have used that because our students are comfortable. I know our teachers spend a lot of time there. So I tried to find the one spot that made sense where they didn't have to bounce around from tab to tab.
Now, in my school district, we have another way of getting teachers to be comfortable in their digital world, and we use Google Sites. Nick, are you familiar with Google Sites?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, new Google Sites, I guess we can still call them new Google Sites. Right? We haven't whisked away the old Google Sites yet, but they're coming up in, I believe it's 3 years old, because we were in the beta program, which was pretty awesome. And so all of our teachers now are using new Google Sites for their creativity, for their lesson planning, for their digital playlists, all those great things. And so we've made our tech coaching websites out of Google Sites. So I'm modeling the technologies that I'm looking forward to working with the teachers on. And the neat part about being in a Google environment and using Google Sites is that everything is integrated, right? You have full access to your drive, which means you can insert your videos, your photos, your PDFs, your docs, your slides, your sheets. Anything that you need can easily be put there or embedded. You've got your YouTube videos, you've got your Padlets, any of that kind of stuff, and you can really turn a Google site into whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important thing to think about. You know, depending whatever platforms that you are thinking about utilizing, what does your district or your school use? Because you really don't want them trying something completely different or getting lost in a whole new platform. You want to keep it, you know, in-house. And again, organic, I'm going to kind of use that word a lot with PD stuff, but I think you just want that to be culminated within your district. And I think you said it, what plays well with other things? Because you're going to use so many other tools. And if you want to incorporate thing links and Padlet boards and whatever it is, you know, what are the tools that will allow you to embed and integrate some of that stuff? And, you know, Schoology did it for me, and Google Sites does it, and you can design those digital playlists, and everyone's kind of comfortable with it.
Now, perhaps you are a little bit more tech savvy. I, as you know, build TeacherCast off of WordPress. And you're a WordPress guy, aren't you, Nick?
Absolutely.
And you know that WordPress has many varieties. And the neat part about WordPress is that you can do really anything that you want with it. Now, again, I'm going to go back to a few minutes ago when we said just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? There's a lot of different things in there. But when we look at WordPress, you know, you can get a free account at WordPress.com. And you can make a really nice tech coaching website. It's a free account. And you can do really anything that you want. They've got a bunch of themes. They've got a bunch of different features to it. You can embed anything you want. And for no money, you can have a really nice website. For a few extra bucks, you can do, you know, nicholasemerald.com, right? Sure. So there's a few different things that are in there that you can certainly do. Now, if you wanted to have something that's a little bit more safer, I'm a big fan of EduBlogs, right? EduBlogs right now, Nick, is running about 4.5 million educator blogs. I've got teachers using this. I've got students using this. It's a fantastic platform that is safe. It gets backed up. You can do anything that you need to with it. You can work with your class on it. This past year, I got a 4th grade class doing digital assignments and blogging using EduBlogs. Very, very easy to set up and all free, Nick.
Wow. And I will say, you know, I'm not comfortable. It's not something I've actually, you know, dove into as far as EduBlogs and spend a lot of time with. Jeff, what about something like OneNote? You know, could we use that? Could that be something that would work as a website or a way to culminate a hub?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that, because it's important as we start this, you know, the Ask the Tech Coach show. Like, this is not going to be a one size fits all. We're not just going to be Google happy. We're not just going to be Microsoft happy or Apple happy. I mean, we are here to support everybody out there. OneNote is an amazing resource if you're in an Office 365 environment or not. I work with teachers all the time in a Google environment that are using OneNote because it literally can do everything. Now, the difference between, say, using OneNote for your organization, for your digitalness, and Google Sites is, at least in my opinion, OneNote is not a website builder, right? So you have to think of navigation differently. They've got tabs, they've got notebooks, and there's a navigation to it, but it's not quite the same as building it. But what you can put in OneNote literally is everything, right? The one thing you have to realize is that with OneNote, what you see is what you get. You're going to put something up in a corner, that's what it's going to look like. The nice thing about OneNote is that it works really well if you're on a desktop or any of their mobile apps. And I've been switching back and forth. I've got some podcasts that I organize strictly in Google Docs, and I've got a podcast that I organize strictly in OneNote. And I don't see the difference between the two. I do it because it's kind of like one of those mental exercises. I try to keep my mind going, and that way I also keep up to date with all the new features here, because there's so many great things about OneNote or using the Microsoft system. You know what? We would actually love to just ask you guys out there, what do you do with your tech coaching website? What are you building it off of, right? You can, of course, reach out over to askthetechcoach.com. We have a little, ask us a question bar right there. We would love to hear from you. Or if you're on Twitter, you can find us at Ask the Tech Coach. We would love to interact with you and learn more. So let us know what you're using these days for your technology coaching website. But Nick, that's not the only thing that a tech coach has to think about putting together before he meets the teachers for the first time. What else should a tech coach have available for them?
A way to an appointment calendar, a way to schedule all of your events and what teachers you're meeting with and keep yourself organized. It's a way to stay sane as a tech coach.
And what's wrong with just writing everything down on paper?
You know what? As a tech coach, and especially me, I'm bouncing between two buildings. So I can imagine, district wide and bouncing even further. Just picking everything up, right? Like I need everything on my phone, on my tablet, whatever it is. And I want to be in one-stop shop for myself. I don't want to lose papers and things like that. So, and just the feeling I got, Gmail and things on my phone. I want the ability to, something changed. I want to quickly be able to change it at any time, any place and respond back to staff. There are times where I'm not in a building and someone emails me and I'm running into, building B and I can respond back and I can quickly go over to my calendar and schedule something. So I want to be able to take all my notes, all my paper stuff, and basically have it with me at any time, any place. And
the important thing here is that the appointment calendar comes in two varieties. I find either the tech coach is managing the calendar or the staff members are managing the calendar. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I'm your tech coach, Nick, and you say I need some help. Option one is I send you a link to my calendar and say sign up. Or
sure.
We do the email dance and I say, hey, when are you free? And then I'm the one putting it in. And you have to think of that in a few different ways. Nick, do you have any tips and tricks when dealing with calendars and
Sure.
your staff members?
Yeah, and I've played with a lot of them. I've just gone through Appointly, Calendly, which I liked. Calendly was a nice one. You Can Book Me, that's another one. I think a lot of them now are jumping into the paid version where if you want to really manipulate the calendars, you kind of gotta pay for it, especially like You Can Book Me and things like that. Google calendars, like I was mentioning Google before with my email back and forth. I use that. I set up an appointment slot or set up an appointment calendar for staff to be able to book, and I have that linked to Schoology, and I have it linked to an online hub, a website, WordPress site that we put together. And just to allow teachers at any moment to go in and they know where they can go to book me. They can kind of see where I'm at from buildings, for the most part, because we're so open, we can bounce around a lot. But I want that ability. I want them to be able to take ownership of it. I want them to be able to schedule a time. I quickly get the notification. And I always tell them, if there's a change, if there's something that I need, I'm going to get back to you. If I don't, if you don't hear from me, assume all is good. I'm going to see you at that time. I will say I don't stop teachers from emailing. I just found that to just be, there are some, like you said, less savvy tech-wise that just want to be able to talk to you via email. I don't discourage that. If they do it, that's great. I do try to reinforce the book me through my calendar, but I don't use that as the only place. I do take into consideration the emails and things like that.
Now, Nick, do you find that you have to train people on how to use calendars and in the invitation process at all?
Yeah, it's funny, especially teachers who want to set it up, because a lot of them, some, really still don't know about that feature to design the appointment calendars within Google. The other thing, too, is sending out the wrong link, right? Like I always found that as being an issue is you got to understand, like, you can't send the link to the page of the calendar that you're on your physical calendar. We need to send the link that's generated from the appointment calendar. So, that sort of thing. And that stumps a lot of people. And then knowing, that you can actually set up multiple slots, in one time frame or session like that. So things like that, there's a lot of work, and I think teachers have to get comfortable with that sort of thing. Things like Calendly, where there's just the one bullet, or You Can Book Me, where it's quickly like grayed out, is a nice feature as well. And I've played with that a lot, and I found luck with both of them.
Now, I find that at some point, every tech coach is going to have an issue. And I like to play the game, Nick, called, why don't you send me the calendar invite? Because
Sure.
number one, if they want you, then they're going to do it.
They're going to do it.
Number two, that's also a little test for me to see how well they know things. Because if they go, oh, I don't know how to do that, well, then there's one more conversation point.
Absolutely.
But what I also find is sometimes, and I say this a lot, right? Google, Microsoft, all these different programs, they're not designed for you. They're designed to be collaborative. So you're going to get yourself into a situation where I'll say, Nick, why don't you send me a calendar invite? And so Nick goes onto his calendar and writes, meeting with Jeff, and then sends that to me. Now, I get that in my email, and what do I read? I go, meeting with Jeff.
Right.
And so I find sometimes I have to say, and this is the learning, this is the teachable moment here, right, Nick?
Sure.
When you put a calendar appointment in, you don't do it for yourself, you do it for them. So you might say, meeting with Nick and Jeff about something in there. So that way, when you send that invitation, it doesn't just have your name on it. It actually has everything that you need to do in there. And I find sometimes as a tech coach, those are the ways that I get into classrooms or I get into conversations with teachers of just those little side door conversations. Nick, do you have any tips on maybe,
Sure.
What's your number one tip of how to break that wall and actually get into a good conversation? Let's not even say classroom yet, just good conversations with teachers.
Yeah, one of the things, you mentioned it earlier, and I kind of wanted to touch on it, and I just want to kind of go back, is modeling the things, right? When you pick a website, you pick an LMS, whatever it is, you talked about Google Sites, and you even mentioned digital playlists, right? Like, you designing a digital playlist using Google Sites is modeling for the teachers a whole nother teaching style, right? A whole blended learning opportunity. So like when I use Schoology and I kind of gamified my PD all via Schoology, that was a talking point because that then got teachers like, wait, how did you set up these separate modules? How did you get it to close out certain paths? Oh, what is this about the gamification leaderboard you have? Now we get talking, right? And now it's like, oh, well, what I'm doing for you is I'm modeling what gamification is. And I'm showing you how to create these badges and release them through Schoology. Hey, you could do that with your students. They become talking points. So any of these things we do, I just think that to me has been the biggest thing to opening up me getting in the classroom has been, let's get these starter points, these talking points first that interest you. And then from there, let me come in, let me show you, and we can spend some time facilitating the instruction in the classroom. We can spend time meeting and putting together, the digital playlist or the self-learning paths that you want in Schoology.
Nick, I think the one thing that's clear for any tech coach is that the beginning of the school year is always difficult. You've got teachers that have no time. They're getting in their classrooms. They've got to get stuff together. They got things to do. And here you are saying, hey, how you doing? And it's easy to feel lonely, right?
Sure.
And I think for any tech coach, the number one thing that you can have on your side is a very strong professional support group, professional learning network. And there's so many of them. Nick, where do you go to turn to for your professional learning?
Sure. I get out for conferences and things like that, and I think we have to do that. I think, we have to stay on the cutting edge, and a lot of our admin, our districts, our teachers, they do expect that we have the answers for everything, right? And it's not going to happen, but we try our best to stay accustomed, to stay on the cutting edge, and that's one of the things is getting out. But it is building a little cohort. Like I have my little cohort of people I'm really close to in the ed tech, in teaching and the ed tech coach world. You being one of them, and bouncing ideas and staying in contact. And when you have those struggles, knowing that you have a group of people that you can reach out to that probably share in a lot of the same issues, that you do. And when just that idea that, I'm not the only one. Oh man, I had this down day and I didn't meet with anyone. Let me see if other tech coaches had that same issue that day. Or in general that they've run into this issue and why, and start bouncing ideas. How can we get in more classrooms? Or I want to try using Ozobots in the classroom. How do I do it? I don't have the experience in doing that. Let me reach out to someone who does. So, find a niche, find a group, and make that your go-to cohort.
You can find a great professional support group over at askthetechcoach.com. This is episode number 11. On our show notes post, not only have we gotten detailed information on everything that we've talked about, but we've also got some great links. One of the posts that recently came out on TeacherCast is called 10 Great Instructional Technology Coaches, 10 people that I've turned to over the last couple years, Nick being one of them, of where I go to find some great information. There's also a great professional learning network over at ISTE called the EdTech Coaches Network. They've got a great hashtag. They do Twitter chats. They're very active at the convention. Nick, have you had a chance to interact with anybody from the EdTech Coaches Network from ISTE?
I have, and just various people. I think a lot of them, some I may not even know if they're part of that, but I've stayed in contact with people from all over. I remember, and I think that's one of the big things just to remember. It's the same for teachers, when you're teaching. Don't be afraid to reach out to other people. We were hesitant to do it and to reach out, and it feels kind of weird at first, but I remember talking to people in Pennsylvania and California when I wanted to gamify my classroom in the high school level. So, Chris Aviles, I stay in touch with him and Tech Up Teacher and talk about things in STEM and maker spaces, because I know that's a big thing with him. So, find a niche for people, know what they're comfortable in, and then build that connection. I think he's part of that, right? Has he been on that ISTE?
Chris is amazing, and he's certainly one of the top 10 great tech coaches, along with 9 others. There's a lot of great things that are out there. Now, guys, this is, like I said, Ask the Tech Coach podcast, episode 11. We kind of started the concept a while ago and didn't quite take off, kind of started the concept. Nick and I recently came together and said, we want to help you. We want to help the tech coaches of the world out there learn how to get comfortable, learn how to work with their teachers, but that can only happen if we work together. So we want to know where you are out there. We want to know what kind of things you're doing in your school district. Maybe you're a new tech coach, or maybe you're a tech coach that's been doing it for a while. We would love to have you on this show. We've got some great things. Our plan is to release an episode every Tuesday. We're going to try our best to keep to all that. But the idea here is to really walk you through an entire school year as a day in the life of a tech coach here. So August, we're going to be talking all about the things that you can do to get ready for your school year. And as we get into September, we're going to be talking about ways that you can bring the technology into the classroom without being so overbearing, right? Because that's an important thing, right, Nick? You don't want to be walking into a school district going, I know everything, let me help you, right? You don't want to be that guy.
No, definitely not. And you want to feel it out, right? Like building the relationships and getting a feel for the staff and the district's needs and the school's needs. And yeah, don't be that guy, right? Don't come in. It's tough when you have all of these ideas and these fun things you want to do, but find out what they're doing and try to meet those specific goals of the group that you're specifically working with.
So we welcome you to go over to askthetechcoach.com. Sign up for our mailing list. We're going to be doing a lot of tech coach-focused things, and over the next couple months, we're going to be developing some freebies. I like freebies, Nick, don't you?
Definitely. Freebies for me.
One of the freebies that we recently put together is a little spreadsheet on gamification, because we actually had a teacher ask us, what is gamification and how it works? Nick, let's just kind of do a 30-second here, but what is gamification and how does it work?
Yeah. So often, misinterpreted, right, with game-based learning. And it's not just playing games in the classroom, as much as I love that idea and Super Smash Brothers and Call of Duty and bringing that in, right? But it's not. It's using game mechanics in the classroom. So how can we increase student engagement via an avenue where students spend a lot of time, right? Especially after school and sometimes during it now with Fortnite. And how do we use game mechanics where you can pick different paths and increase the difficulty level and then beat a boss in the end? How do we bring those things to education in order to increase student engagement and greatly affect impact the students in the end?
So look for that over on teachercast.net. You can, of course, search for it over there. We've got a lot of great stuff. Nick, you've also been writing some nice posts on TeacherCast about Schoology.
Yeah, I have. It just was a great LMS that I spent a lot of time using, and I just felt it'd be another resource out there for people to hear from someone who's just kind of gone through it and used it both as a teacher and now in the PD setting. So I released a couple, right, with your help, and we've put it on TeacherCast. And we have, ways to stay organized using Schoology, how to organize your courses, and how to archive and restore for at the beginning or the end of the year, things like that. Just ways to stay sane and clean up your presence in Schoology.
So remember, go to AskTheTechCoach.com. You can, of course, find this podcast wherever your podcast listening habits are. That's Apple Podcasts, the new Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, you name it. We are out there. And, of course, we would love to have you as a subscriber. And, reach out. Be a guest on our show. Find us on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach. On behalf of everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury.
And I'm Nick Amaral.
Reminding you to keep up the great work in your classroom and continue sharing your passions with your students.